So now I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker tonight, Brad Cohen. As a child with Tourette syndrome, Brad Cohen was ridiculed. He was beaten, mocked, and shunned. Other children, teachers, and even sometimes family members found it difficult to be around him. His mother's encouragement and his brother's support were key elements that kept Brad going. College and then job hunting brought new challenges, but he continued to strive toward his goal to be a teacher and was rewarded when he was named Georgia's first-class Teacher of the Year. Nothing has stopped Brad from taking leadership roles in a variety of settings and being a role model. Brad's story of personal challenge and unwavering determination proves anyone can make their dreams come true. He has served as Vice President of the Board of Governors for the Tourette Syndrome Association of Georgia and founded an overnight camp Twitch and Shout for children with Tourette syndrome. Brad has a bachelor's degree from Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois, where he graduated cum laude with honors and received their Outstanding Young Alumnus Award. Brad has earned master's and specialist degrees from Georgia State University and graduated from both the Gwinnett County Leadership Academy for aspiring school administrators and Cobb County's Leadership Academy. Brad has received many other awards, including St. Louis Area United Way Volunteer of the Month. Brad is currently the assistant principal at Bells Ferry Elementary in Cobb County. Brad and his wife Nancy reside in Roswell with their 2 boys. So please help me welcome Brad Cohen.
Thank you, Mark. It's an honor to be here. Congrats to all of our winners. What a great event we have tonight. So you're probably asking yourself, why bring Brad Cohen to speak? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because I have a story. I have a story that I believe each and every one of you need to hear. You see, people didn't believe in me. People didn't want to give me a chance because I made funny faces and funny noises all day, nearly every single day of my life. And growing up, all that I wanted was to be respected. But that didn't happen. Today, my goal is to inspire you. My goal is to remind you about the difference that you make. You see, my story begins the summer of my 4th grade year. My mom sent me to an overnight camp. There was skiing and sailing and horseback riding, and I had the time of my life. But I started making these weird noises. This eeping sound, this drop sound, this whop sound. My eyes started blinking more rapidly, and my neck started going back and forth. I came home from overnight camp, and my mom saw me. And immediately she knew something was wrong. She didn't know what was going on. Why was I acting so differently? She tried to figure things out, but it wasn't so easy. Because the next week, school started. Remember your 4th grade class? You had to sit in your seat. You had to face the front board. You had to listen to the teacher. You had to keep your mouth closed. But I couldn't do that. I made all these noises. And the more that I made my noises, the more my teacher said, "That's enough out of you, Brad. That's enough. Stop making all those noises. Stop making all those noises." And it was weird. The more she told me to stop making those noises, it was like the more I had to do it. The teacher that evening would call my mom. "There's something wrong with your son. He keeps disrupting my class. Tell him to be quiet." My mom said, "I know. I don't know what's going on. I can't figure this out." She said, "Take him to a doctor. Figure it out." And that's what my mom did. My mom took me to a doctor, and quickly we learned that I had a medical condition called Tourette syndrome. My mom tried to educate people about Tourette's, but they didn't listen. I remember my 5th grade class. My 5th grade class, I sat in that same seat trying to mind my own business and learn like every other student. But no, my teacher had enough. She said, "Brad, stop making all those noises. That's enough out of you. And matter of fact, Brad, get up here in front of the class and apologize to everyone for making all those noises." And that's what I did. I got up out of my seat. I came up to the front of the class and I apologized to everyone for the noises I was making. And I went to sit down. And she said, you get up there and tell them that you won't do it again." I got up there and said, "I won't do it again." And I sat down, and what did I start to do? Well, those same noises. You see, I don't remember the book reports. I don't remember the science projects. But I do remember my first speech in 5th grade. But in many ways, that classroom environment was a safe environment for me. Because the next year, middle school. Middle school. Remember middle school? If you weren't wearing the right thing on the right day, if you weren't one of the social kids and the popular kids, then you were the dork or the geek, or in my case, I was the kid in the corner that made noises. I had no friends. Nobody wanted to be friends with the noisemaker. And there I was in my math class, sitting in my seat, trying to mind my own business and learn like every other kid. But no, my teacher had enough. He said, "That's enough out of you, Brad. Stop making all those noises. I know you're doing the hiccups on purpose. Stop disrupting me." And as he did that, the kids sitting behind me started flicking me in the back of the head, trying to shut me up. And then the teacher said, "That's enough out of you, Brad. Get up here in the front of the class. Take this timeout slip and go across the hall. I don't want you in my class anymore." So I walked into the class across the hall. And the teacher said, "You're here again? Get to the back of the room, face that back wall, and don't turn around." And that's what I did. I learned math backwards. And it probably has something to do with the fact that I'm not good at math today, but that's a whole nother story. Because I tried. But in many ways, that was a safe environment for me, because in a few moments, that bell was going to ring, and I had to go back out in the hallways. And that's where they were waiting for me. Because when I got in the hallways, the kids were waiting for me and started to push me around. They booked me, and my books went everywhere. They would shove me up against the locker, trying to shut me up. I hated school. I hated school so much. And then finally, it was lunchtime, and I would sit in that seat and mind my own business and eat lunch alone. And while I sat there, the mean kids, they paraded around me and mocked my noises. They shoved food in my face and tried to shut me up. I hated those kids. I hated every single one of them. I wanted to beat them up so bad. But something deep down told me I couldn't just go around beating kids up. And when I looked for one teacher to come save me, they all were turning a blind eye, pretending like they didn't even see what was going on. Man, I hated school. There was nothing to like about school. And then one day, my principal came up to me and said, "Brad, what do you think if we were to educate all the students in the school about Tourette syndrome?" I thought to myself, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? I will lose my friends? Well, I didn't have any friends. So the two of us got up in front of all the students in the school and we educated them about Tourette's. We told them that it's a neurological disorder which causes people to make noises and tics that they can't control. We told them it's hereditary, it's passed down generation after generation after generation. But I just happen to be the first generation of Tourette's in my family. We told them that there's medicine out there that could help Tourette's, but there was no cure. And many times the side effects of those medications outweighed the benefits. And then the last thing we told them is that I was open and honest about living with Tourette's. And if any time anybody wanted to come ask me a question about Tourette's, feel free to do so. I felt good about myself. I felt really good about myself, and I went to sit down, and that's when the most amazing thing happened. Everybody in the audience on that day started to clap for me. They gave me a standing ovation as I sat down. I'm thinking to myself, I'm getting a standing ovation because I have Tourette syndrome? This is weird. But then I realized they just wanted to know. They just wanted to know why I was so different. On that day, I realized the power of education. On that day, I realized what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be that teacher that I never had. I wanted to be that teacher that would give kids pats on the back for doing good things. I wanted to be that teacher that would give out those scratch and sniff Snickers for no reason at all. I knew someday, some way, I would be able to be a teacher. Oh, I had a dream. I was going to be a teacher. See, the next year, all those kids from middle school, they went to high school with me. Now I went to a really big high school. So I was this little bitty fish in a great big pond. But understand this, my life got better in high school because people understood my medical condition. My self-confidence went up. My self-esteem went up. My academic grades went up because I didn't have to worry about the teacher kicking me out of class. I didn't have to worry about the kids flicking me in the back of the head and trying to beat me up. I was finally able to focus on what was important, academics. And that's what I did at school. I focused on academics and I tried my hardest and I worked hard. I joined a youth group outside of school where I realized I had leadership abilities. I started to make genuine friends and people started to like me for who I was on the inside and not what I was all about on the outside. Life was really good for me. Life was really good for me. And I'll never forget the day that I was walking down the hallways at my school, and I heard the following announcement. The following colleges and universities are visiting today. If you'd like to meet with one of their representatives, you can meet them in the counselor's office. Now, I grew up in St. Louis, so I heard University of Missouri, University of Illinois, Michigan, Harvard, Yale, Bradley University. Bradley University? There's a school named Bradley University? I can see it now. Bradley Cohen attends Bradley University. This school's got my name written all over it. So I went home, I said, Mom, I know where I want to go to school. She goes, where do you want to go to school? I said, Bradley University. She said, why do you want to go to Bradley University? I said, because it has a great name. She goes, you can't go to school just because of its name. She calls my dad. You need to hear where your son wants to go to school. Brad, where do you want to go to school? I said, I want to go to Bradley University. He goes, why Bradley University? I said, because it has a great name. He goes, you can't go to school just because of its name. But guess what? 1 year later, I started attending Bradley University just because of its name. Now, it was pretty cool. I don't know how many of you have ever been to a college or university that has the same name as you, but it's cool. Let me tell you why. Because I used to go to the Bradley basketball games, and I used to sit in the front row. And you know who was in between myself and the players on the court? The cheerleaders. Oh yeah, it went like this. Let's go Bradley! Let's go Bradley! Oh, it got better. They started spelling my name. B-R-A-D-L-E-Y! B-R-A-D-L-E-Y! I was like, this is great! Yes! I was like, Mom, you gotta come visit. This is so cool. She's like, no, focus on academics. Focus on academics. I didn't go to Bradley University just because of its name. It was a good school. It was about 2.5 hours away from St. Louis. It was a smaller university. If I went to a big university like Georgia, I would have drowned. That wouldn't work for me. And they had a great education program. They got us into schools our very first semester. So here I was at a new school, and I had to figure out how was I going to educate all these people about my medical condition. Well, I realized I would do the same thing that I did in high school. And that was at the beginning of every semester, I went up to my teacher and I asked if I could just take a few minutes to educate everyone in the class about Tourette's. They never had a problem with it. So I thought, what better professor to do that to at my college than my education professor? I went up to my education professor, I said, hi, my name is Brad Cohen, I have Tourette's syndrome, blah, blah, blah. Can I take just a few minutes at the beginning of class to educate everyone? He's like, Brad, I don't know, this isn't high school anymore, we got a lot to do, I gotta get through the syllabus. I said, please, just give me a moment. He's like, Brad, I just don't think we're gonna have time for this, I'm sorry. I said, please, it's really important. He said, okay, I'll let you talk, but it needs to be at the end of class. I said, that's fine. So there we were in an auditorium. We were in an auditorium on the first day of class. And the professor is up there, and I'm sitting in the front row, because that's where I learn best. And I was a nervous wreck. And the professor gets up there and goes, hello, students. My name is Professor blah, blah, blah. And today you're in Education 101. Now remember, I was up here with a nervous wreck. I'm whopping, dropping, making all my noises, and he can't focus on what he's doing. He said, before I go any further, I'd like to introduce one of our students, Brad Cohen, to come talk to y'all. I said, you said the end of the class, not the beginning. He said, get up here right now. So I came up at the beginning of class and I educated everyone about Tourette's. And immediately, the crowd was relaxed. I became relaxed. And my professor, he never became relaxed. That's a whole other story. But I felt good about myself because I educated everyone. You see, it's important when I educate people because people understand. And once people understand, it makes my life a lot better. You see, the hardest thing about living with Tourette's syndrome is ignorance. It's the people who don't know and the people who don't want to know. But once you know, it's a whole new world. So here I was at my new college, and I was trying to work hard. And I worked my tail off for 4 years at Bradley University. Now understand this, when you're a guy who has Tourette's syndrome, you start reading a chapter in your book, and you start twitching your eyes, you start making your noises. You get halfway down the page and you forget what you were reading. You get halfway down the page, you forgot what you were reading. You got halfway down the page, you forget what you're reading. And sometimes you literally forget what book or even what subject you're doing. But I never made excuses. I never made excuses because I knew one excuse will lead to another excuse and lead to another excuse. And next thing you know, I'm living my life full of excuses. I worked hard. I worked real hard at Bradley University for 4 years, and I'm honored to say that I graduated cum laude with honors. Thank you. I had great student teaching experiences. I had great leadership opportunities. My resume was nearly flawless, and I had to decide where was I going to go be a teacher. I decided I'm coming to Atlanta, Georgia. Why Atlanta, Georgia? Because in 1996, when I graduated, Atlanta, Georgia is where the 1996 Summer Olympics were. And I said, if there's going to be a world party, I want to be part of it. So I came to Atlanta. And at night, we went to so many Olympic events. It was awesome. But during the day, that's when it happened. Interview after interview. After interview, after interview, after interview, after interview, after interview, after interview, I could not convince elementary school principals to hire me as an elementary school teacher. They said, Brad, how can you possibly be effective in the classroom? Brad, I've never seen someone with Tourette syndrome be a teacher. What will we tell our students? How will we explain this to our staff? And what about the parents of those kids? It won't work. I said, yes, it will. They said, Brad, if you work at my school, my fifth graders will beat you up. No, nobody's going to beat anybody up. And then I had one principal just kept going at it. Brad, if I've never met a guy with Tourette syndrome be a teacher and be successful in the classroom, there's no way you could do this. I immediately asked for my portfolio back. And I said, thank you very much for this opportunity. And the principal said, but we're not done with this interview. I said, yes, we are. Because if this is how you're treating me as a potential employee, then how are you supporting the students in your school that have special needs? How are you supporting those teachers who work with those kids? No, this is not the school for me. I walked out of the school, I got in my car, and I started to drive home. I started to think about how I just wanted to be a teacher. And teachers deserve an opportunity, but they weren't giving me that opportunity. I thought about how many interviews I've been on and kept getting rejected. I started thinking about it so much that I started to cry. I cried so hard that I literally had to pull over on the side of the highway, recompose myself, get back in the car, and get back to my apartment. And when I got to my apartment, I took my sport coat out, and I put my portfolio down, and I pretty much cried myself to sleep that night. You see, my mom kept saying, come back to St. Louis. People know you here. You'll eventually get a job. My dad said, go be a substitute teacher. Let them see what you can do. You'll eventually get a job. Fell asleep that night with the worst attitude. The worst attitude. And then I woke up the next morning and I had to make a choice. Was I going to keep that negative attitude, or was I going to start off the day with a new, fresh, positive attitude? I didn't want to go back to St. Louis. I didn't want to be a substitute teacher. I knew what I wanted. I wanted to be a teacher. I knew I could do it. I printed off 25 resumes. I grabbed my sport coat, grabbed my portfolio, and I went to school after school after school to find that job. I walked into schools, I saw the secretary, I asked for the principal. The principal came out, and I said, hello, my name is Brad Cohen, I'm looking for a job. If you have an opportunity, please consider me. I walked into some schools, and the secretary said, the principal's not here. I said, that's fine, my name is Brad Cohen, I'm looking for a job, please let the principal know. And I walked into some schools, I couldn't find the principal, I couldn't find the secretary, so I hunted down the custodian. I found the custodian, I handed him my resume, I said, I'm looking for a job, please let the principal know. He goes, okay. I said, I didn't care. I had to take the initiative to find this job. I got back to my apartment that night, I took off my sport coat, put my portfolio down, and I felt really good about myself. And then the phone rang. The phone rang. Hello, is Brad Cohen there? This is Brad. Hi, Brad. I just want to know if you have taken a job yet, or have you become a teacher yet? I said, no. They said, can you come in for a job interview this afternoon? Can I come in for a job interview this afternoon? You know it. I grabbed my sport coat, my portfolio, and I headed back to that school. And when I got to that school, it was like no interview I had ever had before. You see, they started to ask me questions like, Brad, what is your philosophy of education? Brad, what do your reading groups look like? Brad, how do you communicate with parents? What is your classroom management style? You see, the other 24 interviews that I went on, they never asked me those questions. They only focused on the fact that I had Tourette syndrome, and they had to figure out how they could hire a guy with Tourette's. But on this day, I knew something special was going to happen. I'll never forget the moment when that principal, he put his hands behind his head. He kicked his feet up on the desk. He said, Brad, do you mind if I ask you a personal question? I said, no, go ahead. He said, Brad, I gotta know, do you make those noises when you sleep? I was like, what? What kind of question is that? Is that even legal to ask? I looked him straight in the eye and said, I don't know, I'm sleeping. And then I said, no, seriously, when I'm relaxed and I get comfortable around other people, I don't make my noises nearly as much. On that day, my 25th interview, I was hired as a second grade teacher at Mountain View Elementary School right here in Cobb, Georgia. Right here in Cobb County. Thank you. Yeah, I finally got a job. I was on top of the world. Now let me tell you one little thing. I was hired 3 weeks into the school year. They hired a new male second grade teacher. The principal went up to those other teachers in second grade and said, hey, I just hired a new teacher. Can each of you choose about 3 or 4 kids from your classroom to give to the new guy? Oh yeah, you know what happens next. I got the kids that couldn't read. I got the kids that couldn't write. I got the kids that couldn't sit still. I got the kids with the high maintenance parents. I got them all. But it didn't matter. I'll never forget the day that they were walking their desks into my classroom. And they're like, we got the new guy. We got the new guy. I'm like, get in there. I got the last kid in my class and I closed the door and they were all over the place. I'm thinking, oh my goodness gracious. I went to a 4-year university. I graduated cum laude, but they never teach you what to do in a situation like this. Thought to myself, all right, think, Brad, what are we going to do here? And then I knew what my first lesson was going to be. It was going to be to teach those kids that despite your disability or your challenge or your weakness in life, that you can go out there and follow your dreams, much like I was able to follow my dream to become a teacher. I sat down in my rocking chair. I pulled all the kids in front of me. I said, good morning, students. They go, good morning, Mr. Cohen. I said, yes. I said, boys and girls, there's something I need to tell you about myself. I have a medical condition called Tourette syndrome. Tourette syndrome is a neurological disorder which causes me to make noises and tics that I can't control. Every single one of those kids look up at me like, huh? I was like, okay, they're second graders. All right, break it down into their language. Boys and girls, there's something in my brain that tells me I have to make funny faces and funny noises all day, every single day of my life. Much like there's something in your brain that tells you that you have to do something every day. Does anybody know what that is? A boy goes, oh. I said, yeah. The boy goes, my brain tells me to breathe, otherwise I'm going to die. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm thinking about. Then this really sweet girl in the front row raises her hand. I said, yes. She goes, my brain tells me to raise my hand whenever I want the teacher to call on me. I'm like, no, brown noser, that's not what I'm talking about. Think about it. What does your brain tell you to do all day long? And then this boy goes, oh. I go, yeah. He goes, my brain tells me to talk all day long. My mom has me on medication, but it doesn't always work. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Come on, boys and girls, think about it. And then this boy goes, my brain tells me to blink my eyes all day long. I said, exactly. Just like your brain tells you to blink your eyes all day long, my brain tells me to blink my eyes, but it also tells me to make these noises. And I can't stop, just like you can't stop blinking your eyes. And then a boy over in the other corner goes, but Mr. Cohen, I can't stop blinking my eyes, see? And he goes, I go, okay, you can stop for a moment. And I can stop making my noises for a moment, but eventually I have to start making these noises just like you eventually have to blink your eyes. And then a boy in the back room goes, but Mr. Cohen, I need you to know something. Actually, there is a time that I don't blink my eyes. And I said, well, really? When is that? And he goes, when I sleep. I said, good point. When you sleep, you don't blink your eyes. And when I sleep, I don't make my noises. And this really astute boy goes, but Mr. Cohen, I must tell you something. I do blink my eyes when I sleep. It's called rapid eye movement, REM sleep. I said, well, actually, you're right, yeah. I said, actually, that's 5th grade curriculum. You're in 2nd grade right now, so we're not going to worry about that. And I got real serious. I said, boys and girls, there's one thing we will never, ever do in this classroom. Like, oh my goodness, he's mean. I said, we will never, ever play hide and seek. Because every time we play hide and seek, you just listen for me making my noises, and then you find me. And then you find the teacher. And the teacher never loses. And in this class, we will not play hide and seek. And then that boy says, let's play hide and seek. So we're not playing hide and seek. But they got it. Despite the fact that they were only 7 and 8 years old, they got it. They understood. You see, I'll never forget the day that I was walking down the hallway to art class. And we walked past a kindergarten class. And one of the kindergartners started mocking my noises. one of my students got on a line, went up to that kindergartner, and said, "Don't make fun of Mr. Cohen. He can't help it. There's something in his brain that tells him you have to make those noises, just like there's something in your brain that tells you have to blink your eyes." Well, the kid's like, okay. But I'm like, they got it. They understand. They understand. And I let my class know that I was there for them. I had a very tough class. And when those kids couldn't read, I stood by their side and made sure that they could read. I made sure they know that I was not going to give up on them because I knew what it's like for a teacher to give up on their students, and that would not happen in my classroom. Now, don't get me wrong, I had a tough class. I'll never forget the day we were outside of recess. We were outside of recess, and I hear, Mr. Cohen, one of your students are writing bad words on the back wall of the school." I get closer, and I see one of my students grabbing berries off of a berry bush and writing on the side of the school, B-I-T-C-H. "What are you doing? We don't do that." I'm thinking to myself, you can spell that on the back wall of the school, but you can't spell the word boat on your spelling test? Come on! And then, a week later, I hear this ruckus going down in the bathroom. I get a little closer and I go in the bathroom, and I have kids that are taking toilet paper and they're going from one end of the bathroom to the other, and they shove the wad in the toilet. And they're trying to catch it on fire and see how long it takes. We don't do that. What are you doing? We don't do that. And then, that afternoon, I kid you not, at the end of the day, my assistant principal comes over the loudspeaker and goes, "Hey, Mr. Cohen, can you come to my office after school? We need to chat for a minute." I'm like, "No problem." I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm in trouble. She found out what happened. I'm in trouble. I'm just going to handle things like I normally do. I'm going to be upfront and honest. I'm just going to apologize and let her know it's never going to happen again. So after school, I go down to her office, and right away, she's like, "Hi, Brad." I'm like, "Hi," and I didn't waste any time. I'm like, "Listen, I am so sorry. I didn't realize what happened. I wasn't paying attention. I'll make sure it won't happen again." She's like, "What won't happen again? What are you talking about? What did you do, Brad?" I'm like, "Nothing." She's like, "Brad, what are you up to?" I'm like, "Nothing." She goes, "Sit down. I need to talk to you for a minute." I'm like, "Okay." She goes, "Brad, we'd like to nominate you for an award. It's called the Sally Mae First Class Teacher of the Year Award." I was like, "I don't know." She goes, "Brad, we need your permission to do this. We'd like to nominate you." I said, "I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'm Teacher of the Year material." She goes, You are. I said, "But understand this. I got kids writing bad words on the back wall of the school. They're starting fires in the bathroom, and you want me to be Teacher of the Year? Wow, it's easier than I thought." She's like, "No, you've moved mountains. You've taken these students that other teachers didn't want, and you have made a difference in their life." So I said, "Okay, we can do this." And a few months later, we learned that I was selected as the First Class Teacher of the Year for Cobb County. And then, 2 months later, we learned that I was selected as the First Class Teacher of the Year for the state of Georgia. Thank you. For the state of Georgia. For me and me alone, it was a big deal. Because 1 year prior to winning that award, I had principals telling me that I couldn't do it. They told me that I could not be a successful teacher, and now I'm being recognized by the state of Georgia. It was a reminder about perseverance and never giving up. And that's why I needed to share my story. I knew I could share my story in my school, but I had to do more than that. And that's when I decided that I wanted to write a book. I wrote a book called Front of the Class: How Tourette's Syndrome Made Me the Teacher That I Never Had. It was a story about overcoming challenges and following your dreams. It was for every teacher out there to remind them about the difference that they make. It was for every kid out there that has some sort of disability, weakness, or challenge in life to show them that they can overcome it. It was a story of inspiration. I knew I was making a difference. I will never forget the day after I wrote my book that I got a phone call. "Hello, is Brad Cohen there?" "This is Brad." "Hi, Brad, this is Oprah Winfrey." "Oprah Winfrey?" She wanted me to be on her show. She wanted to do a show about beating the odds. And she flew me up to Chicago to share my story. And then, after being on Oprah, I was contacted by Hallmark Hall of Fame. They wanted to make a made-for-TV movie about my life. A movie about my life? I thought to myself, well, who's going to play Brad Cohen? I thought my favorite actor of all time, Denzel Washington. They're like, "Brad, that's not going to work." But we have this wonderful lady to play you, Patricia Heaton from Everybody Loves Raymond and so many other things. We have this great guy to play you, Treat Williams. He was in Everwood and so many other things. And Brad, we have this amazing gentleman to play you. His name is Jimmy Walk. Jimmy Walk? Who's Jimmy Walk? I went right to imdb.com, looked up Jimmy Walk. I was like, what? He's only been in one episode of Young and the Restless as a sailor? This sucks. This is my movie. My mom gets a great Patricia Heaton. My dad gets a great Treat Williams, and I get Jimmy Walk. Come on. But then we visited Shreveport, Louisiana, the set up front of the class, and I saw Jimmy Walk in action. I was like, wow, this guy is really good. I thought to myself, I've been making these noises for 40 years. He's been making these noises for 2 weeks, and he already makes my noises better than I make them. This is awesome. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever had a made-for-TV made about your life, but it's the most surreal thing ever. And I'm really proud to say that in the movie, it was about 90% true. They did an amazing job, and I was really proud of it. See, I knew that my story would make a difference. Because people who live with Tourette's have a hard time. You see, when I go to a restaurant, I sit down in my seat and everyone starts to stare at me. Sometimes the manager asks me to move to a different table because I'm disrupting the patrons. When I get on an airplane, everyone prays, I hope I don't sit next to that guy. Movies, movie theaters, well, that doesn't happen because every time I go to a movie theater, I just get kicked out. So I decided to buy myself a big screen TV and a big old lazy boy and watch movies in my own house. But again, living with Tourette's is never easy. It's never easy, but I never gave up. I never gave up. You see, today I wanted to share my story. I wanted to share my story, and now I want to make sure you know a couple things about me that I hope you can relate to in your life. And it's what in education we call character education words. The first word is passion. Love what you do and do what you love. Go out there and find something you're passionate about. I hope that you're passionate about your job. Give it all you got. It's about keeping a positive attitude. I'm not saying you can't have a negative attitude. I'm just saying when you wake up the next morning, start off with a new positive attitude. Because that's what I did. It's about perseverance. It's about never giving up. It's about never making excuses. There were so many times in my life that I could have made excuses. I could have given up. But I dug deep, and I made sure that I did not give up because I knew I could be successful. And then, the last thing I want you to know tonight is what I call the power of one. Everyone please put one finger up in the air. That's right, I'm a cheesy second grade teacher at heart. You see, the power of one says that all it takes is for one person to make a difference in the life of a child. Who's that person going to be? Is it going to be you? 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 Who's going to be that one person to make a difference in the life of a child? Who's going to be that one person to make a difference in the life of someone else? You see, my challenge to you tonight is to be that one person to make a difference in the life of someone else. You see, there's a Bradley Cohen in every single classroom across America waiting for someone to believe in him, to give him a chance. There's a Bradley Cohen in every community. The odds are against him. But if people believe in that person and give them a chance, you can be the difference maker for that person. My challenge to you tonight is to be that one person to make a difference in the life of someone else. Before I leave you tonight, I'm going to leave you with one more story. It's called The Starfish. If you heard it before, you need to hear it again. And if you've never heard it before, I hope you never forget it. It goes like this. One day there was a little boy, and he was at the beach, and he was singing and dancing, having the time of his life. And as an old man walked closer and closer to the boy, he noticed that he wasn't just singing and dancing, he was throwing things out into the ocean. So the old man went up to the boy and said, "What are you doing, little boy? What are you doing?" The little boy said, "I'm throwing starfish out into the ocean. There are thousands and thousands of starfish on the beach today, and the tide is low. And if we don't get them back in the water, they're all going to die." The old man starts laughing. "There's no way you can save all these starfish." That little boy picks up a starfish, looked the old man straight in the eye, and threw that starfish as far as he could out in the ocean. He said, "I may not be able to save all these starfish, but I know that I was able to make a difference for that one." And that's what it's about, my friends. It's about the difference that you make. On your toughest day, I want you to think about my story. on your colleagues or other people in your community. When they have a tough day, I want you to remind them about my story. And I hope that you say the same exact thing that my second graders used to say about me. And that is, if Mr. Cohen could do it, then so could I. Cheers. Thank you all very much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Brad, you were definitely the right person to have here.